Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Express, which is becoming everyone's favorite talk show. It is profoundly real and interesting, so without any further delay, please help me welcome back to the stage the beautiful and expressive director of Express, Carolyn. Carolyn, take it away.
Welcome to Express. I'm your host, Carolyn. It doesn't seem like 24 hours ago, but time has gone so quickly, and we're back. And we're back to hear another story from my guests. My guest today is a couple, Doctors Orlando and Maureen Moncrieffe. So let me just do the preliminaries and then we get them on to stage. Remember, for those of you who have just stopped by chance, please don't go. Just share, like, and subscribe. And for those who have been with me from the beginning, thank you so much. Thank you for following. Thank you for coming and to see all the stories that are being presented each day. We're now about to start, so let me get the Moncriefs online in in the studio. One moment. And they are here. Welcome, guys. Lovebirds.
Good to be
Look at you
here.
both. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate that. For taking the time out to come and to share your story with the audience. Now, how is your day going so far?
Fine so far. It's
Same
nice
here.
and bright outside.
Oh, yeah, in Florida. Yes, nice and sunny, right?
That's
Right.
right.
Nice and sunny. Okay. Now, normally I would do the bio, but I'm going to do it right now. Listen to who we have here today. This is just a tip. Pastor Moncrieffe, he is a retired SDA pastor at Allegheny East Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. He studied Masters in Religion at Andrews University, and he studied his PhD in Biblical Studies at Duke University. He studied Bachelor's of Theology at West Indies College, which is now known as Northern Caribbean University. He went to Jago High School, lived in Eustis, Florida, and he is hailed from Spanish Town, Jamaica. And he's married to Maureen, who is right beside him, Maureen Moncrieffe. Now, Lady Moncrieffe, she retired in 2018 as a teacher, owner, and principal of her own school, daycare slash preschool. She had a Bachelor's of Arts from Andrews University in Business Education, and at Atlantic Union College, she had a Master's of Education in Curriculum and Instructions. She had a Master's in Reading. We don't find a lot of people around who have their Masters in Reading, so we got to talk a bit about that from Grand Canyon University. In 2015, she graduated from Walden University with their EDD in Teachers Leadership. And she hails from Kingston, Jamaica, and they're both married. They both got married in 1969, and she got married to Orlando. They now have 5 children, and Seth is a twin, and they have 8 grandchildren. Wow, we are in for a treat. Wow, after reading that, I don't even know where to start. But we have to start, right?
Right.
Okay. So tell us again, how did you both meet each other?
We met at West Indies College when I went to college. It was in the second semester of the school year. He was already in school, and we met in a music class, a music theory class. We also were pulled together during the summer break when we were doing summer classes. And because many of the students would go home or go to work or whatever, in preparation to come back to school, we who were at school had to form new singing groups because the choir in the full complement wasn't there, and
Mhm.
regular other
Funny.
groups were not there. So
Right.
the music department would take whoever was present, and form the group. So sometimes I would sing a solo. I'm a soprano,
Okay.
was at least a soprano. And so I would sing solo sometimes, but we had was it a trio? A mixed quartet that we would sing in. So we were pulled together that way also. And that's where we met at West
Okay.
Indies College.
Okay. So, okay. Now let's go back a little. So you're from Kingston,
Hmm.
Marine. Tell us a little about family. Your mom, your dad, your siblings.
Okay. My father was Dudley McKinley, and he's brother to Herb McKinley. I'm not sure if any Jamaicans are, visit your site, but
Mhm.
Herb McKinley was an athlete, well-known athlete in Jamaica.
Okay.
My favorite uncle, he was more like a father to me than my father was. My father really wasn't present.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that he was my father, but he never did fatherly duties to me. So he was just there. He and my mother were married for a very short time,
Mm-hmm.
and then they split. So I didn't spend any time with him. I can't remember ever living with him, as a child, young
Mm-hmm.
child coming up. My mother, on the other hand, um, she struggled. She struggled. She was not the kind of mother that should have a child to take care of at the time. And so she had this best friend who was a teacher, and they came to a mutual agreement that the teacher would take me, and that is the person with whom I grew up.
Okay.
Her name was Ina Parker. She taught at Kingsway High School, along with when Mr. Percy was principal, along with Eva Williams and Eric Price. I don't know if anybody listening would know
Mm-hmm.
any of those names. Probably
Sure.
would.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yes. So she taught, and a lot of the older ministers who passed through Kingsway High School. That's where she taught. She taught them. She taught them biology. She would have them come to her home in preparation for GCE,
Mm-hmm.
the final exams that you take when you reach Form 5.
Yes.
And so a lot of that, she had a lot to do with those older ministers. So she was really an influence in my life.
Right.
And
Yeah.
because of that, I wanted to become a teacher.
Teacher. I was thinking that too.
You see, because I lived with her for so long, and the only thing I saw was her teaching, so I
Yes.
wanted to become a teacher also. So my mother really wasn't the kind of person that should bring up a child that, when I was much younger. It wasn't until I got up into my higher teenage years that I would switch from staying with um, Miss Parker, who I
Mm-hmm.
called Auntie, and then I would go and stay with my mom, and then I would switch. But if my mother, teenagers,
Yes.
how they can get. So if my mother did something or said something that I didn't like, I would pack up my things and go back to my aunt. And if she said something to me that I didn't like, I would pack up and go back to yeah. So and then the thing too, in my later teenage years, when I was heading now into college, is that by this time my mother, I think, was coming into herself,
Mm-hmm.
older, much older, but I think she was now coming out of that kind of lifestyle that she was living before,
Yes.
because she came under the influence of a lady named Vinette Walker. Vinette Walker, she worked at East Conference. She was
Yeah.
secretary to all the presidents at
Wow.
East Conference. One president left and the other one would
She
come
just
in.
stay there.
She was the secretary, yes. A very godly lady, and sorry, her dad. She lived with her dad. She was never married,
Mhm. Okay.
but she lived with her dad. And my mother got sick. My mother was living on the same road that that lady lived on. And my mother got sick, and she found out. And she took my mother out of the house that she was living in and took her to her home down the
Mm,
road. And because of her living with her, I think her life started turning around now.
mm,
So yes, so she began, that's when the change, I think, took place for her.
okay.
And yes, so when I would come to stay with my mother, I came under the influence of Vinette Walker also,
Okay.
which helped me, because some of the things that um, we used to call her Miss Vin, some of the things that Miss Vin would talk to me about, like a mother should talk to a child
Yes.
about, if you have a boyfriend or anything like that. She would
Mm,
encourage me and say, if you have a boyfriend, bring them and let them sit. She would let me bring any boy who wanted to come and visit me and sit in her living room,
mm,
and so things that she would talk to me about, my mother never did,
did. Okay.
never did. So she really played a major role in how I looked at life as a teenager and what some of the things that I should and shouldn't do and all like that.
Mhm, mhm.
And then by this time now, I'm getting ready to go to college. And it was Miss Vin who accompanied my mother and myself to West Indies College.
Okay.
Yes. So, and then when I went to West Indies College, now I met him.
Okay.
And after graduating, after 2 years, we graduated. I graduated. By that time, he had graduated the year before me. And then we got married in
Okay.
69.
And okay, so I'm going to ask you a little bit about that, being apart from each other when we get to that point. So it's now your time now, Pastor. Tell
I
us
hear
your
you.
story.
Yeah. My parents were not married. And my father left the house, if you might call it that, when I was 17 days old. So I've never had him as a present figure, as a father. And it sometimes has me thinking how it is that my wife's parents were married for a short while. My mother and my father were never married, and we have been married now 53 years. It just seems strange. And that is why I'm grateful for all the things the Lord has put in our way. I grew up on a sugar estate. If I were to show you where I was born, and I'm speaking to a Jamaican, I would say, you see that cane piece over there, sir? I write this up because
Interpret,
that is it.
interpret what you
Yes.
just said. Interpret what you just said.
Okay. You see that cane field over there? That
Yeah.
is where I was born.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had very humble beginnings. Humble beginnings. We lived in a single, how should I call it? A single barracks house, as it were, with about 6 different apartments. Depart, each apartment had only one family. No plumbing or anything. Everything was outside,
Okay.
pit, toilet, standpipe, all the rest of it. The 1951 hurricane blew the house down. It rested, thankfully, on a mango tree that had been blown down just behind it. And so they moved us to a place called Clifton. We now had concrete buildings, but
Mm,
still no plumbing of any sort. Everything was outside. We had a common bathroom that everybody in the little community of about 8 families lived. There was no school in the area, but there was a cricket field. Well, before I go to the cricket field, there was an old soldier, we call him Jack Tom, who started a school about 3.5 miles from where we lived.
Okay.
And so I would have to go to that school. That's where I learned for the first time, started learning. By this time, I was almost 6 years old.
And
That's
you
when
are
I
the only
started.
child. You are the only
The,
child.
yeah, the only child, and my mother's only child.
Okay.
My father, was not present. To cut long story short, he had 9 of us, 7 different women. I will leave it at that.
Okay.
So he was never a part of my life in that regard. He would come and take me to the movies sometimes on his bicycle. He had a bicycle that he loved to use. And but that's about the size of it. But he cared about me a lot. He was happy that I was doing as well as I was doing, especially when I passed the government scholarship to go to high school and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But after going to Jack Tom School for a while, it was quite a task to go there. They decided that we should have a school closer by because more children now needed to go to school. And there was a cricket field called Lime Tree Oval. And what they did was decide to use the pavilion for the school, for the cricket field as a
Mm-hmm.
school.
Okay.
So I went to school in the pavilion. It wasn't made of us, it was just all they had was seats and so on. So you had to sit on the bench and write on your lap.
Mm.
That was how it went. Then my mother, my stepfather, because my mother was now living with somebody else, he went all the way to Turks and Caicos Islands, found Adventism, and came back to Jamaica. And now we said, look, we can't live together like this. We have to get married.
Mm.
And so they got married. I was about 6 years old, about 7 years old at the time. And that was how my connection with Adventism started. And I thank God every day for that connection, that my stepfather went all the way to Turks and Caicos Islands and came back with Adventism because my whole life became different as a result of that.
Okay.
So I now they moved, and I was going to a school in Innswood. Again, not a real school. It was a church that had services, an Anglican church had services on Sundays, and they taught us in there, in this church, during the week. The first time I went to a real school that was built as a school is when I got the scholarship and went to St. Jago High School. And that is where everything started to take
How
a
old were
different
you at that
direction.
time?
I was 11 when I
Okay.
went to St. Jago because in those days you started the school year in January, not like now we start in August or the.
August.
It was January to December. That was the school year, and so that was where I now started going to school, a school that was built as a school. And it's interesting. Up to just last night, I was with someone who was a classmate of mine from those days back in 1959.
Wow.
So I went to high school, was doing well. My intent was to become a medical missionary. I
Before
always
you go
wanted
any
to see.
further, do you
Huh?
think the environment helped you to excel more? You said you went, you had, it was this classroom was more like a classroom now. Do you think
Hmm.
that had to do a lot with the way you studied or
Yes, it did, because now for the first time I understood
yes?
what an education was all about. Why was I going to school? I mean, I just went to school before because everybody goes to
Sent
school.
you to
So you
okay.
go wherever you can go. But now, through my teachers and seeing how they had done well and so on, I began to shape now what I really want to do. And by the time I got to Form 4, I was already committed. I was a science major. I was doing maths, physics, chemistry, biology, and those kinds of things. That
Mhm.
was my liking. So I decided I'd become a medical doctor, but I would go as a medical doctor and be a medical missionary. So that was my commitment. But in 1962, 63, somewhere around there, I got the feeling that the Lord was not, it was going to take me 8 years from where I was to complete medicine. I said to myself, there's no way that I'm going to finish medicine before the Lord comes. And so I decided, let me go and do ministry, pastoral ministry, and at least do something for the Lord before he comes. That was the whole idea.
Wow.
Well, long story short, I passed up for 51 years. I am now finishing 4 years in retirement, and he hasn't come yet. But the way I look at it is, he's 54 years closer now than when I made a commitment back there. I don't see it as a matter of a delay. I'm just thinking the Lord has his reasons for all the things that he has done. So I went to Wesley College.
Mhm.
I had to work for a while because my mother didn't have the money to pay for me to go to Wesley College. I had no father, and my stepfather left her for a while. We were living from house. We lived 13 different places in and around Spanish Town
Wow.
because we just could not afford to be settled in. And there was a point in my experience, and this comes to my mind all the time when every time I sit down to eat, I think about it.
Mm.
We didn't have anything for me to eat. And when I was living close enough to school, and there were 2 times I was living close enough to school, I'd walk home at lunchtime, stay home for a little while, and then go back to school. So my friends would not know I didn't have anything to eat.
Wow.
But that's how bad it was at times. So I'm grateful for all that God has taken me through. And sometimes I feel that we as parents, because we try so hard not to let our children have to go through all that we went through, there are some lessons in life that
That
we
they
have
need,
learned
they
that
have
they have
need.
not had a chance to learn.
Sure.
And I do feel we have created a problem for them in that regard. Thank God all the children have grown up well. They're all in the church and so on. I'm happy for that. But there are some things about being in real need that they have never experienced because both of their parents have always been employed and have always been able to take care of
Okay.
them. So that is basically how that went before I went on to West Indies College, where I met this young lady who was a secretary in the music department. And we sang together on the choir, we sang together in a mixed quartet. And so that was how it began. And as we say, the rest is history.
I am curious to know, what did you see about Lady Maureen that got your attention? It's not just singing. Tell me,
Well, she
or
was
tell
beautiful,
us, I
as you
should
can
say, not
see.
just me. Tell the
Yes,
audience.
yes. Yeah, she had a certain kind of assertiveness about her.
Assertive.
She
Okay.
would tell you how she felt and what she felt. There were times it didn't come across all that nicely for me, but at least you always knew where she
You where
was.
you stood.
You
Right.
knew where you stood.
I love people
And that
like
helped a lot. She will just tell you straight out.
she's not
Whether
a
you like it or
hypocrite.
not,
She
that is
tell you
not the
as it
point.
is. Yes. Yes.
So you get a chance to know. So you know that if everything is going well, everything is going well. You know if something is a matter, you're going to know.
Yeah.
So, but she had leadership skills.
Mm-hmm.
We had a girls' club called Phil Melodia, right?
Melodian,
Yes.
yes.
And she at one time was president of the girls' club. That's all the girls on campus. And to become president on your campus, that was something special.
Yes.
For the boys, I served part time one time as president of Excelsior, the boys' club. But she had leadership skills that people respected and understood. And while she was teaching at West Indies College in the secretarial science department, she became president of the
Mm-hmm.
secretarial science group. So
That's
there
good.
was leadership skills that people could see,
Yes.
and that was part of what drew me to her. But the singing, she had an incredible voice. She could go way up there and not have to shout like most people have to do when they're singing high.
Yeah.
So that was a major part of it.
Okay. Good. Good. And then you separated according to what Lady Maureen said. There was a time when you had us like you finished and she wasn't. One of you
Yeah, I
were.
finished in '68,
And then
and I
she was
would
still
go.
in college.
Yes, she was still in college for a year. So I would go on the campus and visit on Saturday nights. That was how we saw the date because we didn't have any phone at home to call each
Oh,
other. It's not
Okay.
like now.
no
So
cell phone
no
first,
cell
yes.
No
phone,
cell phone.
and not even house phone.
And
Wow.
this gentleman did not like to write letters.
Okay. So you would just see him pop up.
Yes, sometimes he would promise to, say, I'll come next week or next 2 weeks. And
Uh-huh.
you look forward to him coming and then he doesn't show.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
it
here I
happens.
am.
Yes.
It happens, of course, that in those days I did not understand fully what
Ministry
his
Lord.
his work entailed, what the
Yes.
ministry entailed. So maybe sometimes there were probably board meetings or
Yes.
something going on, some at the last minute some meeting was called and it
Somebody needs
prevented him
some.
from coming. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
But
Yes. Yes.
he didn't give me any excuses and I didn't know what was
You
going
didn't
because I was at
ask.
school, he was in Maypen, and that was that. So you know, it's disappointing when you look forward to something, and then it doesn't happen. So yeah, a lot of that happened.
But that's how the phone comes in so handy now, right?
Oh yeah,
Right.
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yes,
Yes,
You've
it
you've
certainly
seen both
does.
worlds, so you can really appreciate it.
yeah.
So you got married. Where,
Mhm.
when, and how was the wedding?
We got married in Spanish Town, decided that, okay, he lived in Spanish Town, I lived in Kingston. And most of our friends were on the college campus. So how do we decide where to have the wedding, you
Mhm.
know? So the decision was we would get married in Spanish Town, but the reception would be held in Kingston. So people, let me tell you, every single person drove from Spanish Town to Kingston. So we could easily have had the,
Mhm.
the wedding in Kingston. Everybody would have showed up.
Oh,
But so yes, and it was a home reception. In those days you had receptions at home
yes.
and
But they
you
can be
didn't go
nice.
and
Home receptions can be very nice if it's well
yes.
nice.
I
Yeah.
mean that was what was happening back then. You didn't go and rent anywhere,
Right. Right.
like a hall or go to a hotel, and have receptions or anything. You did the wedding in church and you went home and set up your chairs outside, and that's what we did.
Right.
Had the reception at my favorite uncle's home, and he was the one who walked me down the aisle. My
Oh,
father was not available at the time. He eventually ended up in politics and had to travel
okay.
because of his work. So my uncle stepped in and gave me away.
Give you away. Was there a
Yes.
lot of
So
people there? About
pardon?
about a lot of people were there, relatives
Yes.
and friends.
I don't remember exactly how many, but mostly everybody who we invited
As
came.
you said,
Yes.
yes,
Yes, and everybody trekked all the way to Kingston.
yes. What about
To
the
the
honeymoon, or did you have one, or?
We did not have a honeymoon. We have not had a honeymoon yet. I'm still waiting.
I'm sorry, Master.
Still waiting.
I'm not saying anything.
Oh boy, why did I say
A
that?
honeymoon is an experience, not a place. Okay.
Still waiting
Okay,
for the experience then.
okay,
But
okay.
in those days, the thing is, any, we didn't have a lot of money
Yes.
because let me tell you, the money that we used for the wedding, the reception, that money came as a result of some money that was overpaid
Hmm.
for me at West Indies College. When my mother migrated to the United States, she left me in his charge. I had to go live at his house, and that he was supposed to pay my school fee, my college fees. That was the agreement that they had. But he never kept his share of the agreement. It
Your
came a
father,
time,
right?
that's my father,
Right.
never kept his side of the agreement. And so exam came up, and if you can't pay what you owe, then you can't take exams.
Exam, yes.
Yes, and they call you into the business office and told
Oh
you that you owe this amount and it had to be paid.
dear.
So,
We all-
and he was supposed to pay it. So I did not even go to him. I did not call him because he was not somebody that you could approach.
Mm-hmm.
So I called my mother. She was living in the United States at the time. Called my mother and told her what happened and that I wouldn't be able to sit the exams if the money wasn't paid. I don't know where she got it from, but she paid the money and she paid everything thereafter. She did not, you know, haggle with him about anything. She just continued paying.
Mm-hmm.
So when I graduated and all the bills were paid, I had 39 pounds. That time it was still pounds. We had not changed the dollars yet.
Right.
39 pounds over. And those 39 pounds is what took care of the wedding.
Wow. 39 pounds.
That
Wow.
was a lot of money.
But a lot of money, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
And I can tell that you can really do money management because you really made it stretch, huh?
I had to. I had to. I couldn't give it away. I couldn't because I knew we didn't have it, we
Mhm.
didn't have it. And my mother made my wedding dress. She was a seamstress. So
Okay.
that spared me some money on the Jamaican side. She was in the States and she bought the material and made my dress and everything. But the other things that we needed, I had to make sure that I had money to pay, pay for the cake, pay for the food, and
Yes.
all like that.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
The
Okay.
renting.
So now you got married. Where did you actually live? Kingston.
We lived in Maypen right after we got married.
Mm-hmm.
Lived in Maypen for what, 3 months? And then because we got married in October, and then by January he was transferred to Brownstown in St. Anne. So we had to move from Maypen to Brownstown.
Okay.
And
So
we
we're
were that's
Mayton.
when we started having children, when
Okay.
we went to Brownstown.
So we're gonna close in a minute, but before I close, I'm gonna ask you this question, and then we close because we're gonna have to go to episode. It's gonna be two parts. When you started living together, how was that?
It was a little difficult in that I had a perception in my head of what married life should be.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't turn out to be that. So it was a little difficult for me. And
Okay.
and let me tell you, as a matter of fact, I was young, and I think I was immature. I
Mm-hmm.
was not. I should not have been married at the time because I was immature.
Um, Pastor, come a little bit more into the yes, that's
Okay.
better. That's better. So, you didn't know what to expect, really.
I
You
didn't
didn't
know
know
what to
what to
expect.
expect.
Yes.
Yes, as we were saying that there were you didn't know what to expect.
Right. And
You were
I,
too young, you said maybe you should
I,
have got married then.
yes, I got married at
No,
21.
about 21.
Yes. Pushing it
Yes,
again.
yes, yes, yes. Come back, yes.
You're lifting this side too high. Yeah.
That's
Oh,
okay. That's okay, right? That's much
okay.
better. So
Yeah.
anyway, so let's go on to hear what Pastor has to say.
Yeah, well, I spent 3.5 years at Western School preparing for ministry. So my head and my thought is in the ministry that I'm preparing for. I'm getting married and expect my wife and I just to be a team. But I'm sure that there are some expectations a woman has about getting married because she didn't come to Western Culture to marry a minister. So it was a big adjustment to have to make.
Yes.
And so we started off, both of us 21. I was almost 22 at the time. And when the children started coming, that was a challenge because we had twins, the first twins, and they would not ever eat together at the same time at night.
Okay, we're
They
gonna
were an
stop at
hour
that.
apart.
We're gonna stop at that. When we get
Okay.
back, we're going to now discuss, or you're going to tell us how you coped with having a twin, these other children in your marriage, with you being a pastor, and so forth. So we will close now. But before before I close, I just can't wait to hear the part two of this whole episode. Pastor and his wife, Maureen, their story. You have a lot more to hear. So I'm so glad they were able to make it. Before I go, I always like to share a thought. And I choose this thought from the Bible. It's paraphrased like 2 Timothy 2, verse 4. No soldier in active service entangles himself in the affairs of everyday life so that he may please the one who enlists him as a soldier. And there's another one from Martin Luther King Jr. If a man hasn't discovered something that he will die for, he isn't fit to live. And the reason why I chose that thought was because the Moncrieffs, I don't know how they found time for each other, for a family, and for all the achievement that they have attained. And their number one was service to God. And obviously, that is something they were willing to die for. And as the quote from Martin Luther King Jr. said, if a man hasn't discovered something that he will die for, he isn't fit to live. Have you discovered something that you will die for? Something to ponder. So I'm saying, this is Carolyn saying bye bye until I see you